Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Sherrone Moore, this Michigan program absolutely putting work in the transfer portal over the last couple of days. And Dill, we got on and did a film deep dive of Amir Hall on Wednesday afternoon. And I remember saying he's probably the most exciting addition that Michigan made in the transfer portal. Now, throughout prepping Jaden Mangham over the last 48 hours, I'd like to revisit that comment and talk about Jaden Mangham being just a difference maker for this Michigan program. Want to dive into the film, talk about what he brings to this Michigan defense, but it starts with, just being a true ball hawking safety that can kind of make those difference-making plays in those games. And you talk about the jump in my mind that we saw Michigan make on the defensive side of the football in 2023. What was different from 2022? It was Michigan creating those turnovers that win you those football games when the margins are slim. Jaden Mangham is one of those guys that makes those plays. Really excited to get into the film. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and just a massive shout out to the Michigan fans. All the support you guys have been throwing in the comment section, that stuff, and it means the absolute world to the boys. Y'all know we are massive Michigan fans, not a program the boys love talking about more than the Michigan Wolverines. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, a couple more film reviews on the docket for this Michigan program. And without further ado, let's get into Jaden Mangham. I'll give you the T-box. What's he bring to this Michigan defense?
Yeah, I think the big thing is exactly what you said, a guy who can truly play that free safety role that Rod Moore excelled in so much. And we kind of talk what pushed Michigan over the edge from being a really good defense in 21, 22 to being like one of the best defenses I've ever seen in my lifetime in college football. A lot of it had to do with taking the ball away. And you saw how good Rod Moore making big plays. The Ohio State one obviously is the one that stands out, but Mike Sanders still same thing, being able to take the football away. Jaden Mangham, he has those instincts. He has that ability to kind of fill in where Rod Moore sort of left off to an extent. And I think that's frankly huge because you look at what Michigan may have been forced to do with juggling their personnel. You maybe need to take Zeke Berry out of that nickel role. You maybe need to move Makari to more of that free safety role where you really want him in the box, being able to deal with tight ends, being able to play run fits. I think it just allows Michigan to keep guys in the position that they're best able to play and be really successful when you can put a guy in Mangham who you don't need to worry about as that free safety.
Yeah, 100%. I think in the span of 72 hours, Michigan went from, having a secondary that we felt pretty solid about, but probably was a little thin, to being one of the most deep units that you see across the country, but also, adding some experience. Because you look at it, guys like Zeke Berry, guys like Jaden McBurrows, they haven't played a ton of football. You're injecting a lot of experience into the secondary as well. And you get into Jaden Mangham. And before we get into the film, two things that I think give a lot of context to his game. And this was a kid that was recruited as a wide receiver by Ron Bellamy to Michigan. You see those ball skills on full display. Was a very good wide receiver at the high school ranks. And then you look at the frame, 6'2", 190. He's long. He's extremely fast. He covers a ton of ground in the back end of that defense. You can play him at that two high safety. Look, you can play him as a single high safety. And you look at, what Wink Martindale wants to do, putting a lot of bodies in the box, maybe putting a little bit pressure on your safeties. You have a guy in Jaden Mangham who you can do that with because of the range that he has in the back end. And getting into the film, I think one of the most impressive reps that you saw against, probably the best passing attack that we saw in the country last year, Michael Penix and the Washington Huskies, got 3rd and 20, late second quarter. Where Michigan State's playing basically a very, very deep cover 2 shell. Michael Penix is going to push the ball down the field, right? And you take a look at rolling this film, Michael Penix doing a great job extending the play. This is an extremely impressive rep by Jaden Mangham where you see him go from those numbers to that boundary exceptionally quick and then going and making a play on the football at the highest point. That is something that you see so many defensive backs really struggle with at the college football level. You can tell that Jaden Mangham not only has the athleticism, the speed, the range to get over there and make that play, but he also is very comfortable playing that football in the air. I think the second one that's really impressive, and then this is, if you're a Michigan fan, what you're most excited about is just the high IQ. You talk about a safety that always seemed to be in the right place at the right time, making these plays. It was Jaden Mangham. You take a look at this play right here, kind of playing very similar to high safety look. You're going to get a play action bootleg from Minnesota. Jaden Mangham going to squeeze this guy to the boundary, and you're going to see him come out of nowhere once again and come and make a play. High IQ, high range. That is what you're most excited about in terms of what Jaden Mangham brings to this Michigan defense.
And even when you talk about what Wink Martindale wants to do, I mean, your safeties do really need to do a good job of controlling space in the field because, as you said, I mean, they like to play more of that amoeba defense in that front seven. They don't necessarily have guys kind of in their position starting off at the snap. He likes to disguise things, and you need to be able to play fast, and you need to play with range. You need to be able to get to spots you need to get to. And again, those are all kind of things like when you see in those couple plays. But even if you just watch deeper into what Jaden Mangham was doing, really comfortable doing that, really comfortable playing that kind of free, again, playing that safety look, that free safety look, especially in being able to get to where he needs to get to, doing it quickly and making plays on the ball.
Now, we talk about Jaden Mangham as a free safety. That is by far his best attribute. That is why Wink Martindale and this Michigan staff went out and got Jaden Mangham, a guy that really fits what Wink Martindale wants to do. You look at another aspect of what made Michigan so good on defense in 2023. When running backs got to the second level, which certainly wasn't very often with how good that front seven was, guys like Rod Moore, guys like Makari Page, Mikey Sandstro, exceptional tacklers in the run game. You take a look at Jaden Mangham, he was the highest graded Michigan State defender against the run. And although he doesn't play in the box that often, he is routinely firing downhill and making plays. And I think you take a look at this Nebraska rep and kind of shows you exactly how Jaden Mangham plays against the run. This is a guy that wants to get downhill, be physical at the point of attack, playing top of your screen right here. Very similar, too high safety look, comes in the box late, and you're going to see him trigger downhill, beat this wide receiver to that gap here, and go make a play. You talk about changing a 2nd and 7 or a 2nd and 6 into a 3rd and 11, letting this Michigan defense pin their ears back, get after the passer on those 3rd and long situations. Jaden Mangham's a guy that certainly can help you win on 1st and 2nd down. You take a look at another rep against Ohio State. Very, very similar look. This is a guy that wants to trigger downhill. He wants to take on blocks and get to the running back. Very comfortable being in the box making plays, right? Beating that tight end on the kick out and making a play. There are so many ways that Jaden Mangham can impact this Michigan defense, and kind of getting to the point where you opened with. You look at the secondary now, you look at Will Johnson at the 1 cornerback spot and say, we feel pretty good about what Will Johnson brings to that one boundary. You look at the other boundary now, you have Jair Hill and Amir Hall probably battling it out for that cornerback 2 spot, but then you look in the secondary and say, all right, Makari Page and Jaden Mangham probably going to be your starting safeties. You said it best. That allows Michigan to get really creative and play a guy like Zeke Berry exactly where he belongs, which is probably playing that nickel role. I think you look at this Michigan defense, not only adding a difference maker, a guy that was 2nd team all-conference last year in the Big Ten, but also probably allowing the rest of the Michigan players to play in spots that they're going to be able to excel at as well.
In the fundamental thing, I think, again, as Michigan fans wanted, if you watch that spring game, you just have to want to watch Zeke Berry in that nickel role. The way he was coming off the line of scrimmage, making plays in the run game, tackling really soundly, like that's the type of thing that at that position made Mike Sanders still so dangerous. Yes, he could cover. Yes, Zeke Berry can cover. But that ability, that knack for getting home when he needs to make plays against the run was, again, what made Mike Sanders still 2nd-round pick when his athletic profile possibly doesn't really show that to many scouts.
You start doing the inventory on this Michigan defense, and you just say it is incredibly deep. Like, you have so much competition all over this field, and you look back at, again, what made Michigan so good in 2023. It was a ton of competition and a ton of depth. I was kind of looking at some snap counts, being a little bit of a nerd last night. Michigan played 4 safeties, over 300 snaps last year, right? Rod Moore, Makari Page, Quentin Johnson, and Keon Sapp. You're going to see Michigan rotate a lot of guys in as well this year. I think that's what's most exciting. I think this secondary went from, I think you feel good about it, but it was thin.
Well, the thing was, you always felt good about the top line talent. You certainly had questions about who was going to be that free safety for sure. So, again, bring a guy like Jaden Mangham, Wesley Walker, kind of a similar story, very savvy, very experienced in that free safety role. But I think you really wanted to fill that spot. I think they do a really good job with that. And again, everywhere else you kind of look, you felt really good about. Makari Page is as good a safety in the country as anyone. I think you look at the cornerback room, you would have always felt comfortable going in with Will Johnson and Jair Hill, but of course you would have wanted kind of a backup that has probably played, or a guy who can, I mean, potentially play with Jair Hill and push him and see who wins out that battle. Obviously.
That's kind of how I think of it. Like, I think it's very similar to what we did with Josh Wallace last year, bringing in Amir Hall and say, hey, we know what we have with the guy like Amir Hall. If Jair Hill wants to play, he's going to have to certainly go out and earn it in competition. You look at Georgia, what has been their recipe? It's been competition. You look at Michigan, what's their recipe? It is just loading this roster with a ton of talent. Let the best man win, and you're probably going to get a pretty good product on Saturdays in the fall. That'll wrap it up. Dill, we got Wesley Walker up next. Very excited to get into him. Another very experienced safety. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.